plug.
Yes, yes.
Now, John Rothman will not be on till 10:30. So, John, if you're hanging out in the green room, our green room is beautiful because it is your house. Grab yourself a cup of coffee, hang out. We're going to talk to Spencer Christian, and then the big John Rothman introduction and segment starts at 10:30. So, and now, as I mentioned, I kind of tipped my hand. The guy who I've known for so long, he has had an amazing career. To be perfectly honest, he's had a much more amazing career than have I. And so it's a little awkward sometimes when I bring him on because I'm looking into staring right into the eyes of great success.
Yeah.
But still, my love for him eclipses whatever resentment and jealousy might otherwise rule the day. He's Spencer Christian, everybody. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Kim. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah. What up, kid? What up?
Actually, I stole your career, so I'm enjoying it.
You were the original career smash and grabber, as it turns out. You didn't even realize it.
San Francisco Crime Cup. Does the cup size increase as the crime rate goes up?
I like that. I like that. Now we're writing. I like this. We're building. This is good. We should take a meeting on the Crime Cup. Spencer just got back from his family. I think Spencer was visiting. You have grandchildren? What's the story, Spencer? Yeah.
My daughter and her family live in the greater Boston area, and I have two grandsons, 7 and 5, and I've spent 5 days of Christmas with them, and it just got back yesterday.
That's pretty terrific. But so I will first ask you about the airports and the flight. Did you have to? Was it really like just crazy to wade through the madness at the airport?
It was pretty crazy at the airport. Flying out of Boston Logan, coming back here, it was jam packed, and yet I was flying JetBlue. I'm not doing a commercial here, but we boarded quickly and took off like 5 minutes ahead of schedule and got into SFO about a half hour ahead of schedule, even with the storm we had to contend with coming in.
That's real, and that it does surprise me. Yeah,
I have to do something really goofy. There's a workman at my door. Can I let him in?
Yeah, go. No, of course. Yeah, this is good.
Come on in, workman. We welcome all.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, Spencer Christian experiences no problems. They do know that he's Spencer Christian going through the airport.
It's bad.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You're absolutely right. Just because of his life. Yeah, it doesn't surprise. Yeah, I don't. Albert was just saying. Of course, Spencer Christian suffers no setbacks at the airport, even while everybody else is getting. But Spencer just glides on through. Yeah,
the lines part, and everyone's like, "That's Spencer Christian."
I live a charmed life, you know.
It's pretty damn good. You know, it's funny. I'm just looking in the so you have so much love that you get in our text chat. You can check it out later, but you can.
Why don't you just text it?
Yeah, text it right into the live chat. And you can say, hey, to Spencer Christian, you might have questions for him or whatever. What's your vacation schedule? Are you off to the end of the year, or what does it work? How does it work?
Yeah, I was supposed to be off till the end of the year and go back to work on New Year's Eve, actually, not New Year's Day, because I was going to fill in for someone. But I got called in today because Sandia Patel is sick. She's lost her voice, and she's supposed to be doing the 4, 5, 6, and 11 o'clock weather today. But in her stead, I will be there.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Well, I know that weather's a big deal, and this atmospheric river, Pineapple Express, Pineapple Connection, whatever you want to call it, is something that is relevant. Do you have a rough idea of? It seems like this is sort of a pause from the super wet weather today. Anyway, is the rest of the week supposed to be wet again, or how does it work?
It is. Yeah, you're right. Today's a pause. I mean that. Plume of moisture, which we call the atmospheric river, is still flowing in our direction.
Plume is a ding word. Yes, go ahead.
That's a ding word.
Yeah, very good. Strong.
Yeah.
Strong ding word. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, come on in, John.
John, come on, John.
Right ahead.
Do what you got to do, John.
So, we we have another little system coming in overnight tonight, and tomorrow. It'll be sort of an average rainmaker. It's going to be a light storm, but it'll give us another quarter of an inch to almost an inch in some spots between tomorrow morning and Friday morning. Then we have another system coming in Friday and Saturday that will start off as a more vigorous storm, but will then weaken a little bit on Saturday. And then we have another one coming in on Monday. So we have 3 separate systems coming our way in close proximity. Oh, is that a ding word too?
Proximity. I'll
Yeah,
tell you.
yeah.
Here now, proximity would not be. I'll tell you what would
Oh,
be. Just so for the future, proximitous. If you'd say proximitous to this, that would be a ding word. But proximity is not.
Right,
The idea that you get storms regularly and that builds a snowpack, that's critical for our water supply, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
True. So true. And critical for for our trying to put a little dent in the drought. Now, obviously, a week's worth of storms, even if they are significant, are beneficial, but they don't really put a significant dent in the drought. But yes, the snowpack is so critical, and there's going to be a lot of that, or at least it's building so far early in the season.
You know, Spencer's had a rich career, as I mentioned. He was on the #1 newscast in New York, Eyewitness News in New York, with legendary people. For those who grew up on the East Coast, as I did, I didn't live in New York, but I used to visit New York a lot. I'd watch all the New York newscast. I was a media person, kind of a media junkie anyway, so I watched Spencer with great interest. And he was weather and also sports for a while, as I recall. And the other thing that was cool, here's a really cool thing I just thought of. When they used to introduce the beginning of the newscast, now it's all recorded. It's Channel 7 News with Dan Ashley and Spencer Christian Weather, whatever. But in the old days, they used to literally have a live announcer, I think, because I know this because they would change it like from night to night.
That's right.
There was a live guy in a booth, or what? He would record it daily, or what would happen?
Yeah. When I first got there, he was live in the booth. Now, I think they eventually had him recorded early, and they would select the one that matched the newscast that was coming up. But this guy had one of those, deep voices, John B. Brasswalls here, and it was great,
and you had to turn in your chair as Spencer Christian.
Roger Grimsby, you tell Spencer Christian with weather. And Warner Wolf with sports.
That's right. It was really cool. And then, so as you moved around, he would move it around, and as different people filled in or whatever, they would change that. I just remember that. That's how old school it was. Yeah. It's just interesting to see. I mean, in your life and my life, how the business of local news is just so different. And honestly, I feel as though you were there at the golden age of it. I mean, that was when, you were all just making sick money. The stations were making sick money. People were paying attention to what you said, what your window on your community was really seen through Channel 7 News in New York, or whatever the station was, local news. It's before the stink of the media. There was sort of this, before the evil media really had any kind of bad rep sort of developed. Now there's this sort of question of nobody trusts anybody about anything, and maybe there's anyway. So I feel like you were there at the golden age.
Oh, there's no doubt about that, Mark. I mean, I caught the wave once again. A really lucky guy. So I arrived in New York in the mid to late 70s on the most watched newscast in the market, maybe in the country. With the most celebrated local anchor team in the country, and everybody watched the news in those days because local news was appointment TV, which we don't have anymore because there's so many platforms and so much stuff is streaming. And as you pointed out, I also lucked into that era in which the most watched people on TV made big bucks, and that went from my local career in New York to my network career on Good Morning America. So I was a very fortunate guy. I caught the wave for sure.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, and the relationships you made through that time. You became pals with Jimmy Carter, Muhammad Ali. I mean, those are the ones that come to mind. But I mean, did you go to Broadway theater and stuff like that in New York? Did you take advantage of all the magic that is New York?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I wasn't a regular theater goer, but I loved it. So I went to some of the the bigger shows like Phantom and all those,
Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah. And more than the going to them, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was going to say they're really like banging on your door to say, please, come to the premiere of whatever, because they want you. You're a luminary. Luminaries are being word. Yeah.
A luminary. There you go. I think about the times I would appear at a public event, and there'd be some famous actors around, like Roy Scheider or someone like that. At the height of their popularity, there'd be more attention paid to me than to these, accomplished actors and performers.
It's just great. It really is great.
Even Ali used to laugh at that, when I would see him, and he would say, "I'm the pretty one, but they're all looking at you."
That's just terrific. And I asked you this before, and I'm sorry to obsess about this, but this is like when I remember Spencer on New York television. When you lived in Manhattan, or did you live over in New Jersey, maybe? Is that what you said?
Yeah, over in New Jersey, in Bergen County, which was the closest bedroom community, just right across the George Washington Bridge to Manhattan. Right. So it was New Jersey's version of Westchester County, but it was a quick commute, great place to raise my kids. They were able to go to really good schools, and I could feel like we had a safe neighborhood and all that. But,
and you then were when did the gambling start? When was like the first thing where because you wrote a whole book about the gambling addiction? Yeah. What was the the moment of the genesis of all of that?
Yeah. And that's not a ding word, is it? Genesis?
Genesis is not a ding word. Sorry.
Okay. In the late 70s, right after I had begun to establish myself at Eyewitness News at WABC, a bunch of us, I was the only on-air guy, but a bunch of us on the team started a Friday night poker game after the 11 o'clock news. And that's when I began to get hooked on this, excitement of raking in the chips and wanting to win. But it wasn't until casinos opened in Atlantic City in 1978 that I really got hooked, because once I walked into the casino and was in this electric atmosphere, with bells and whistles going off and lights flashing, and I happened to have beginner's luck, and I won a few bucks the first time I played blackjack and craps. That's when I really got hooked and immediately wanted to step up to the higher betting level, started getting the VIP high roller treatment, and the rest was kind of a sad history.
Well, no, and it's a compelling history, though. But it's true. You add national celebrity and high roller, and you get the best of everything, and that's intoxicating. So, yeah, I get why it happened, and you document it so well in your book, and we've talked about it before. But I just think it's worth revisiting, because people who haven't been there don't realize how easy it is to get sucked in. I told you, Spencer, the story. Kim, have I mentioned this to you too? And everybody watching, of course, the story of being given, this has just happened a few years ago. I was given a cruise. I get, because of my gambling, this is one of the reasons I like to talk to Spencer about gambling, because I kind of understand it. Yeah. You lose so much money, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. But, Spencer says you win a little bit, like maybe you'll win at the beginning or whatever, and then you'll lose. Then you win a little bit, and you lose. Yeah. So but that little bit, that intermittent reinforcement, they talk about it in psychology, is the most powerful kind of reinforcement. It's the reason, by the way, that if you're at the subway, people look down the ramp. Most of the time when you look down the ramp, down the tunnel, there's no train coming, right? But then one time you look down the ramp, the train is coming. That's intermittent reinforcement. That is the most powerful kind. It's a weird thing. You'd think if every time you look down the ramp, there was a train coming, that would be more powerful. No, it's the intermittent. So the fact that you don't win every time actually is a more compelling way that it hooks you in. So anyway,
it would make sense. It would make sense because that you would think the feeling of losing, that kind of pit in your stomach where you're like, that losing feeling, that would be the most powerful feeling. But it's so interesting that feeling can be overcome by what you're talking about, Mark.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and Spencer talks about this in his book, and we can all relate to it who have been there. I mean, the lowest lows are really low. I mean, it's brutal. You hate yourself. You know what you're doing, and you hate yourself. It's like any addiction. You can't let go of it.
That was a particularly strange feeling for me to experience, because it was the first time in my life I ever, had that feeling of self-loathing, of hating myself, was during those low, bottomless pit points in gambling, when I was filled with shame and guilt and fear, really, like, how am I going to get out of this financial mess without the world discovering that I'm a degenerate, without everybody, changing their view of me and thinking I'm not such a smart guy after all.
When
It
you
was-
ultimately told your story, people were anxious to hear it. Actually,
They were,
And-
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I've had so many people tell me, "Man, I read your book," and it was like Ron Owen said to me, "I thought I was reading my own life story in terms
Right.
of the gambling part."
Yeah.
And I, I had people, Mark, who just knew me from TV and never met me, but found a way to write to me and say, not only that the book helped them, but they wanted to know if they could have some ongoing communication with me so that I could provide them some encouragement. You know how good that makes you feel? I mean, like
Yeah.
you've done something really worthwhile, something really useful and helpful to people who are facing what seems like, insurmountable odds.
Yeah.
And then they wrote, "P.S. Do you have $3,500 you could wire me?" Right.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I can only imagine. I mean, because you are playing for such big money. But yeah, we took a cruise that was given to us because of all my degeneracy gambling. And I keep it. I have a budget, and I'm pretty good at keeping to within the gambling. So I never really got into the addiction, but I understand. I really understand it because I love the action also. And it was just, you made me think of it when it was just like you were talking about. Courtney was with me. It was our first trip together. We took the cruise to Alaska. Now, we're not cruisers per se. I didn't really want to go, but I thought I'd heard that Alaska, it's a very good way to see it by boat. So we get on the boat, we go into the casino, and of course, we start winning. I mean, a lot. And she thinks, she's never seen this before, like this is the way it is all the time. And she's ordering, hot tea to be delivered to the table. It's a version of what Spencer's talking about, that you're just feted, you are just celebrated. And because it was a family cruise and I'm coming in and betting all this money, I was like James Bond to them. They said, do you want us to set up a private room for you? It was hilarious. You would have loved it. In Vegas, you'd just be another, guy from the street.
Right,
but there I was like the big deal. So, but since then, we've been subsequently on those things that are given to you, because and I've just lost. They've more than gotten their money back. It's just crazy how they suck you in, though. It's a wild world, and Spencer documents it so well. So, I mean, the other thing in your history that I just love, and I was fascinated to read because you do seem to have had this charmed existence, and it's never as good as it looks from the outside. I'm sure that there are challenges and adversity, but adversity would be a ding word. But I think that the idea that you grew up in the Jim Crow South, that to me is just that's a powerful part of your story,
Yeah. Well, Mark, I attribute my positive, joyful, aspirational approach to life to my parents, who were remarkable people who grew up in an even earlier, uglier, nastier period of Jim Crow than I did. Did
they speak of that to you as kids?
Yeah, they did, but they spoke of it in a way to educate my brother and me about what we could expect, how we could expect the world to treat us, but not in a way that frightened us or filled us with anger or bitterness, because we were a family of faith. So there was always the faith to lean on. But they were continually, my parents were continually pointing to strides forward being made in the civil rights movement.
Oh, that's
every
cool.
time Martin Luther King would appear somewhere or a new piece of legislation was being voted on, they would say, see, things are improving. Every time there was a federal court decision that that knocked down segregation somewhere. So, and then of course I was maybe I was fortunate that the schools I went to were segregated until I finally graduated, because I didn't. It was an all-black school, and we were just all competing against each other. There was no one there calling you nasty names.
Sure.
There were people teachers warmly welcoming you like your parents would. They were sort of like surrogate parents, encouraging.
And were all the teachers black also?
All the teachers were black. Now the superintendent of the county schools was white, and it was his job to make sure that the black kids and the black teachers stayed at one school, and the white kids and the white teachers stayed at another school.
But you're saying as a kid, you didn't notice it. As a kid, it was just like the way it was.
That's the way it was. It wasn't. I noticed it when weekends came and my family would drive from our little rural town where we lived to Richmond, to the city, to shop. And as we went into clothing stores, for example, blacks were not allowed to try on clothing. You had to buy what you hoped was your size and would fit you when you got home. Anything that touched your skin, you were going to pay for and take it out of the store. So I remember
you writing about that in your book, and it just was it's shocking. It's just a reminder.
the dirty rundown restrooms that weren't well maintained were the ones that colored, and the shiny ones that the stores took care of were whites only. The water fountains, the lunch counters, and that's how it was till I was almost 20 years old. It's a huge chapter of my life.
Yeah. I have to say too that you, through the 60s, saw the civil rights movement flourishing, through the horror. I mean, it was an absolutely horrifying system that you're describing, and your parents lived, as you've suggested, through an even more horrifying system. But it had to be a period of great hope. As you say, there was a lot to hang your hope on as all of these strides were made. I kind of feel like we plateaued. I get frustrated. I feel as though the race is unfortunately going to always, on some level, be this undercurrent of so much of this culture, and sadly, that's just a fact.
It is, and and it's getting worse now than I have seen it in my adult years.
Exactly.
There's so many cynical, heartless politicians who get elected to the Senate and governorships are playing on that. It used to be kind of subtle. They used to have the buzzwords, the dog whistles. Forget dog whistles. They're using foghorns right now. They're just playing straight to the bigots and the anti-Semites and the misogynists. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's I feel like misogynist should be a ding word. So you're that. You get it at the end. Well, Spencer, I love this about you, that you can talk serious, you can talk weather, you can talk light, we can talk gambling. You're just magnificent, my friend, and I so enjoy you, and you're such a great friend of the show. And we didn't even get to, this YouTube audience has never heard the story about you stealing my job at Good Morning America.
We'll have to have you back on again.
For the next time, right, for the next time. So
before we let Spencer go, can I just ask, because SF Gate had it a level 4 storm, the one yesterday, and ABC 7 had it a level 3.
Right.
Now, I wonder, was there a battle?
And what do you think it was? Who was right, Spencer?
Yeah. Now, as you may recall, I was flying back in yesterday, so I wasn't here for the brunt of the storm, but I felt the bumps descending at SFO. From what I've seen in terms of rainfall totals, maximum wind gusts, the damage that was done, etc. From what I've seen of the impacts of the storm, let's put it that way, I would say that on the storm impact scale, which is what it's all about, it was a 3. A 4 would have left more damage behind, more power outages, more property damage, and more severe flooding, I think.
They got it right in your absence. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, the one thing that we learned, we got to wrap up, but the one thing that we learned in our last conversation with Spencer Christian was they really debate and they go back and forth on the level that they say the next storm coming in will be. And sometimes they'll change it. Oftentimes they'll change it if they feel that the latest data dictates that. The one thing, so I think that's great, actually. Storm severity scale, I think, is actually a great little invention that you guys had. I also, though, think that, and this isn't you, I don't know who is doing the naming of a winter storm. Like, this is Winter Storm Elliott. I saw it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. It really is.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, we know who names hurricanes and tropical systems. That's the National Hurricane Center. I don't know who studied. The first time I heard of a winter storm being named was Sandy, right? Was that Sandy back there?
Oh, right. But Sandy was a tropical weather system, I think, also. So that might be legitimately the high ground for that. But here is what I think it's the Weather Channel or AccuWeather or one of them that does it. But it's lame. It's totally lame. You could say the Christmas storm, the Christmas Eve storm of 2022. That's what I lived in Buffalo. We used to talk about the storm of 77, the blizzard of 77. Right. You say the blizzard of 22, the blizzard of Christmas 22. You don't need Winter Storm Elliott. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I'm sorry, but
why are you yelling?
I just think it's yeah.
I totally agree. I say that all the time. It's just silly.
Yeah. Smash the like button for Spencer Christian.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod hard and give it a big thumbs up for Spencer Christian.
That kind of show, huh?
Oh, my God, you people. You can't say anything around here. Thanks, Spencer. Have a great holiday. The rest of it, Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year.
All right.